But.
All right.
I don't know federal, that's wrong. It's a federal government agency.
I did see state legislators trying to eliminate it.
I could.
See that? The Senate bill, like state, still have water,
See.
Howdy.
but you won't have. How's that coming along?
Good. I met KK today, and we're like 82% done. I can't wait.
That's good.
Yes. Ready. I. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely fast already.
Be rolling out stuff on the third. Now, I also have stuff that I'm excited about.
That's cool.
Here I am.
Actually, heritage with there's a small dead zone where you said.
There must be.
Zooming.
Oh.
Is there a reason it's?
No, I think I just am trying to bump anyone up. Cheryl Rainey Hunt needs to be a panelist.
Is there a reason Apple TV is not?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
Can the panelist hear me? Can you hear me?
Cheryl said, good.
Okay,
Cheryl said,
but we
Donna, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Wave, yeah.
Okay. Let me turn the phone off over.
Okay. I think we're good.
Did Brad, is Brad coming at all, or, yeah? He's been-
I don't see Brad.
I
he's
didn't
been
hear
zooming
from him.
in.
Did you-
I did not hear from
you
him.
didn't hear from him? Okay.
Okay, we'll go ahead and start the meeting. Good evening, folks. Welcome to the Town of Pendleton's February Planning Commission meeting. If I could have Rachel, please call a roll call since we're half here and half Zoom.
Yes, Carol Hannah.
Here. Here.
Brad Valentine. is absent. Kyle Eichhorn,
Here.
Tim Pritchard,
Here,
Jenny Sisson. Here. Connie Schultz Hines.
Here.
thank you. Okay, first item on the agenda will be approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Chance to review those in Google Drives or tonight. Doing so, I entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Oh, do I have a second?
Second.
Carol Hannah,
Yes.
Cheryl Ramey Hunt,
Here.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
the minutes.
Yes, sorry. I didn't hear my name in roll call, so I was just typing that in also.
Brad Valentine is not present. Kyle Eichhorn,
Yes.
Tim Pritchard.
Yes,
Jenny Sisson. Yes. Connie Schultz Hines.
Yes.
thank you. Okay, old business, the thoroughfare plan update.
Yes. Thoroughfare plan update. In the last month, we have made some progress on it. I am struggling tonight. Yeah. We held steering committee meeting number 5 earlier today, which already feels like 4 days ago. We are going to be tonight working on the right-of-way dedication and access management control ordinances. We'll talk to you guys about that tonight and get either a favorable or not favorable recommendation. We want to take these to the town council next Thursday for a first reading. We are still on schedule with the new schedule that we put together. We've been working closely with Brian and Brandon on meeting with them bi-weekly to talk through parts and pieces of the project. So things are going well. We'll talk about the 2 ordinances a little bit later in tonight's meeting.
Yep.
You guys have any questions in regards to that particular project? Okay. Number 7 is included in your Google Drive folder, and we are 82% complete as of this week. We are doing a focus group meeting number 3 that's going to focus again on residential design guidelines. That is scheduled for February 17th, and we do have a group that's already been invited to that. So we are looking forward to meeting with our consultants to work through that last little piece. This was a bonus focus group meeting. Kayla and I felt that we've had so many changes administratively that we wanted to pool some town leadership together to make sure that we were on the right track and we were doing the things that leadership wants to see moving forward. So we thought that was really important to make sure everyone was being well represented. We do still plan to have steering committee meeting number 4 this spring. The full unified development ordinance will be presented at this point. And we plan to hold a public input meeting in the spring in conjunction still with the thoroughfare plan if we can get the timing to line up. We think it makes a lot of sense to be able to present the two together and show how they work together and how they're different. So that is where we are at on the UDO update. KK did send me send us some more things to review today, such as sign guidelines, lighting standards, things like that. So I'm excited to start digging through those parts as well.
Fantastic.
Rachel, is that February 17th meeting something that we could listen to or be just a spectator?
I hesitate on that because I don't want to have a forum of any board. So I can record it, Carol, and you can view it later if you'd like.
Okay, I would like to.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome.
Okay, item C is J-Tech Commercial Lots Secondary Plat, State Road 67.
This has not changed a whole lot to the naked eye since the last meeting. It's really a split of a 2-acre site in half. It's in compliance with the planned business zoning district lot standards. Really, last time we presented this, the problems were survey technicalities and some questions about the easement. If Ashbury Point was on board with reduction of those easements because they affected that project. Since then, the attorney has provided me with copies of the roadway utility removal and also with the utility width reduction that overlapped that as well. Ashbury Point signed off on both of them. That site hasn't really been active. So the utility width easement width is still wider than it really needs to be to effectively serve utilities. So 30 feet instead of 40 is still good. Now, Nathan Althouse, the surveyor on this project, and I have been talking back and forth quite a bit. It's between a curve and a line. As the property line along State Road 67. If I could get this board's approval tonight, I think it's something that staff could work through with Nathan to make sure we get it to a good point. And then ask for you to come in and sign it once we have the copy in hand. Actually, just received another rendering of that plat here this evening. So I think we're well on our way to getting.
Okay, I think the only thing missing last month was the utility setback in the building, wasn't it? This wasn't on the document.
The what?
Those two, utility easement and the other setback, just wasn't recorded last time. Is that,
So you said Ashbury Point signed off on the easement, but what about Fall Creek and Pendleton Water? Are they agreeable? Because they're the ones with utilities in that strip.
Yeah, I know Fall Creek, I believe theirs is actually closer to the property line than our town utilities. And it's still a more generous easement than we provide in some of our other developments new. So.
But, well, on the survey, it shows the water south of the sanitary.
Okay.
We just want to make sure that they're on board before you try to take away easement rights that they already have.
I can also check with our utilities to make sure that they're on board.
fair enough. Any questions on the computer Zoom people? Connie, Cheryl?
No.
Carol?
They're all shaking their heads.
Oops. Nothing from me. This is Cheryl. Thanks.
No.
Any comments or questions from the audience? Okay.
If you're in the audience, I guess Nathan,
Somebody was on there a minute ago, Rachel, but I don't know who it was.
Yeah, this is Nathan. Can you hear me? Nope. Why does this look different? This is Nathan. I'm here. Can you hear me? No.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any more questions unless you have questions for me.
I think we're good tonight, sir.
Pardon?
I believe we're good.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, hearing no further questions, I'll take a motion to accept PC 01062021-01 JTech Commercial Lots Secondary Plat as presented this evening, with the exception of just getting the final lot boundary there along 67 defined later.
I'll make that motion, Tim. This is Cheryl.
Thank you, Cheryl. Have a second from you. Thank you, Jen. Rachel,
Carol Hannah,
we're taking a vote now.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Brad Valentine, Brad is no.
I'm here, yes.
That's it.
Brad, Kyle
Yes.
Highcorn,
Yes.
Tim Pritchard, Connie Schultz,
Yes.
Guys, you'll have to sign this plat before it's recorded. So it will not come for signatures until we're at a good place.
Okay, new business. Pendleton Veterinary Clinic Site Development Plan Amendment. 1011 South Pendleton Avenue.
I would actually like to request that this item be moved to the end of new business. Conflict.
All right,
Can we shift this to the end of the new business?
sure. Okay. Duly noted, we'll move on to Fall Creek Corner Secondary Plat at 3104 West US 36.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear why we skipped the veterinary clinic.
Go to the end of the meeting, Carol.
Okay.
So Fall Creek Corners has come back with their secondary plat. It's very similar to their primary. You'll notice that there is a shared parking and access covenant, which was something we discussed at the last meeting when they came for their primary plat. I would also recommend that we add a stormwater drainage shared covenant of some sort, but I think that's probably more legalese than I'm up to, but my concern is that if we plat this out and it goes under separate ownership without such a covenant in place, that we could end up with each site handling their own stormwater, when knowing that it is such a concern across this entire site, it would be more efficiently dealt with as a whole, especially since there is shared parking responsibility. I've spoken with Keith, who I believe is on our Zoom call, Keith Camillian, the surveyor, as well as Ben Hool and Steve Hughes, here over the course of the last couple of weeks about how they see this going. We would like to see the setback removed from the final process. A plan business design guideline, not a requirement. And I think that was really about it. Just to so just to see that. addition to the covenant, as well as the removal of the parking set across the site. Once again, I would ask that staff has kind of final approval over any of the technical aspects of this. Anything else? No. But if you guys are okay, or if you would like more time to review it, just let me know either way.
Okay. Thank you, Kayla. Questions from the staff, from the board, please? Anybody on Zoom have any questions? Carol, Connie, or Cheryl, or Brad?
I'm good.
I don't, thank you. This is Cheryl.
Yes, Cheryl?
Yes, that was Cheryl.
Okay, Brad?
No, I do not have any questions at this time.
No questions? Just from the audience?
Can you just review your comments about the drainage? I know that was a big concern last month, and I'm only hearing part of the conversation.
In the area around life, out of the holes in the areas, but with development, we would see increased need for stormwater storage areas or management. My concern is that as this gets split off into separate lots, the owners might not work together to find a good solution for stormwater management. So just like the shared parking access covenant, that we also see shared water drainage management covenant. Like I said, I'm no real estate attorney. I'm not sure how that would officially look, but some guarantee that if this is split off tomorrow, that the developers of lot 1 or 2 will stick with their responsibility to do that benefits the entire site.
Is the engineer still on there to make a comment?
Yeah, this is Ben Hool. I'm with Landworks Engineering. Yeah, we've addressed the drainage issue with the plat itself by actually having a couple of different areas where we are establishing drainage and utility easements because we know that they're going to be necessary in the future. But I believe in this case, the owner, Steve Hughes, would be open to working through some verbiage to also add to the plat, just stating that the owners of all 3 lots will work together to ensure appropriate drainage facilities.
I probably recommend that when lot 1 and lot 2 do come back for plat approval, if they're sold, that we include those.
As part of the site development.
Right. Yes. Okay. All right. More questions, comments? Okay. Hearing none, I'll take a motion to accept Fall Creek Corners secondary plat, PC 0202021-01.
It's
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve as final.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Thank you, Jenny. Rachel?
Carol Hannah,
Yes.
what is your vote on this motion?
This is
Yes.
Cheryl. I can't hear you.
You're not.
Carol, can you wave your hand? Thumbs up, thumbs down. See you. That's Carol. How about Cheryl?
Yes.
There you go. Thank you.
We can't hear you if you're calling our names. The audio is really terrible.
Brad Valentine,
Yes,
Kyle Eichhorn,
Yes.
Tim Pritchard,
Yes,
Jenny Sisson,
Yes.
Connie Schultz Hines.
Yes.
thank you. Motion carries. Okay. Next, the right-of-way dedication ordinance.
I am going to, hold on, let me disable some talking on here. And then, do you know what the column is? Brandon, is Brandon calling?
Yeah, he's calling.
Oh.
He should be.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, okay, good. Oh, he was on my panel list, but.
I got it.
Hey, Brandon, we can hear you.
Awesome. Well, I'm Brandon Candera. I'm the project manager for the Pendleton Thoroughfare Plan. Ryan, would you like to introduce yourself?
That's okay.
Yeah, also Ryan Phelps, the principal transportation planner with the Council of Governments.
If you recall, we introduced both the right-of-way dedication ordinance and the access management and control ordinance during the January Plan Commission meeting. What I'm asking from you all tonight is a favorable recommendation to Town Council for both ordinances. I will handle the ordinances one at a time. I'm going to briefly review each ordinance, and then we can get into your questions and comments and concerns. Both ordinances reference the town's thoroughfare plan map, which states the functional classification of roadways in Pendleton, as well as the minimum widths of roadways. The planning director does have enough flexibility with both ordinances to offer waivers or grant exceptions to regulations, and this will result in a better product for the town of Pendleton. And one note about the access management control ordinance, it was adapted from the INDOT access management guide, and similar ordinances are used statewide. So first, we could talk about the right-of-way dedication ordinance. The right-of-way dedication ordinance simply establishes guidelines for dedication and deeding of right-of-way to the town for future transportation improvements. Property owners shall be required to dedicate right-of-way to the town in accordance with the prescribed width per the thoroughfare plan map. If the property owner only controls the property on one side of the transportation facility, then satisfactory right-of-way shall be dedicated in order to achieve half of the right-of-way up to the widths required for the thoroughfare plan map. Dedication of right-of-way to the town is done through a warranty deed and must have a clear title. Required right-of-way must be conveyed to and accepted by the town prior to issuance of any improvement location permit or land alteration permit. I will now open it to any questions on the right-of-way dedication ordinance.
this is Brad Valentine. How does a citizen appeal this decision if they do not agree with the amount of right-of-way that the town is wanting to take from their property?
Since, I guess, the way that we have it being conveyed to the town, once they would go for the improvement location permit or the land alteration permit, and they would then find out that some of their property would be dedicated for a transportation facility, I think that is when the property owner would then be notified or would be able to say they don't agree with the ordinance itself and not be able to dedicate the land. That's when they'd be able to do it in the process. But for the simple fact of not being able to dedicate right away, I'm not sure how they would get out of that without the planning director granting some type of a waiver for that property.
Yeah, if I could just add on to what Brandon's saying, basically. So every project still has to go through the standard plan commission process, the standard site design review process. So if there was a disagreement about the amount of right-of-way that needed to be dedicated per the thoroughfare plan, it would be already part of the negotiation process, essentially with the town staff. So with the planning director would have kind of the final say there. Well, the planning director and the planning commission would have the final say.
So for example, if somebody has a parcel that they're not altering the boundary on, they just want to say build a house, would they be required to dedicate right away? Or is it only if you're trying to plat?
I believe if they were going to build a house, that would trigger a improvement location permit. And going through that process, they would have to dedicate right of way, depending on the street that it's on, of course.
So some of our roads are old county roads. And of course, there's no right of way on some of these.
Yeah.
So when we talk about lot setback lines and things like that in those areas, we're gonna have issues with that. So yes, if you're gonna go build a house, this could trigger that. And then we would have to look at it and see if it's appropriate to, be requiring this right of way dedication at that time.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. And on the thoroughfare plan map, there is a context zone that specifically covers the historic downtown and the limited right-of-way. And those right-of-way widths are already preset. No right-of-way will be acquired within that historic context zone boundary.
Is the historic district boundary the actual boundary, or is it a reduced amount?
It's a little wider, actually. And as we're going through the thoroughfare plan process, we'll be making that context zone bigger. But right now, you can see the context zone generally cover the historic district. I think it might be missing a few parts to the north around Falls Park. But I can say the new thoroughfare plan map, a part of the thoroughfare plan does include Falls Park and Pendleton Avenue to the north and south.
So the context zone will be expanded to cover the actual historic area?
Correct. That is correct, Brad.
All right, thank you.
There's a lot of areas in town where the flats go to the center line. So you're saying you're not requiring new dedication within the context zone?
No, even though we have a width there in the context zone, those widths were basically formulated with current right-of-way already. And we know that there's not much room to acquire road right-of-way for transportation improvements to keep the historic character of the downtown. So no right-of-way would not be acquired in that context zone.
Brandon, if I can actually chime in, so
Yeah.
the context zone, still within the thoroughfare plan, you're still only setting minimums, right? So it's still up to the town to say, what and when actually needs to be applied. So what the total width would end up being. The context zone just allows you to have a little bit more flexibility because of those constraints in the existing downtown conditions, basically. So the widths that you're going to be asking for here are likely going to be a lot smaller than what you would see in a new subdivision type of condition or on a new expansion roadway. But you can still ask for, whatever the town deems necessary in those locations. And part of the thoroughfare plan that we're completing includes a design matrix, which kind of outlines the different elements that could be included within the right-of-way. And that'll help inform kind of what the final option would be and what the actual right-of-way would need to be dedicated within, whatever area of the town. So, maybe the town decides that even though the right-of-way right now within the downtown area is 40 feet, let's say, they can still expand it out if you want to add in sidewalks at some point in time. You want to factor in those additional elements so you can expand what the right-of-way is. The minimums are what are set within the thoroughfare plan and the thoroughfare plan map. And then it's up to the town to look at each existing condition and the specific context to make the decision of what the final right-of-way dedication would be.
My concern, if you're pulling an ILP for a permitted use and the town's going to require you to dedicate right away, that's almost like a taking without compensation because it's a use by right. My thought was if somebody buys a 5-acre parcel and they want to build a house, they shouldn't be required to dedicate right away along their entire frontage, only as part of maybe a platting process. I don't know of other places that would require for just a building permit.
Actually, it's a fairly common across the state of Indiana to make these requirements. Typically what happens is we're kind of formalizing the entire process because typically what happens, right, is somebody comes to the town and they want to do whatever, a development private property and build a house, and then the town says, well, look, we're gonna need to expand that roadway at some point in time. And then they start negotiations. So this is kind of formalizing the process to streamline it and make sure that it's easier. But the point here is actually to save the taxpayers money so that we don't have to go and spend time and money purchasing that property when there's an expansion that has to happen. So that the time to do it is when there's a new property owner or a new development that's coming in.
But are they gonna be compensated for their taking?
No, it's
I mean-
part of the doing business essentially. If you want to move here and build a house, and that's great, you know, we would love to have you here, but part of the trade-off that you're making is that you are bettering the town by dedicating the property to the roadway where whatever could be expanded in the future.
So if the owner refuses, they would be denied their permit.
Yes.
Good.
This is Brad again. Can you clarify that, for example, on the Collector Road, is that in the suburban areas 80 feet on either side of the center line?
It's 80 total feet, so it'd be basically 40 on each side.
Okay. And in the context zone, that's 48 total feet, 24 and 24?
Yes.
Thank you.
So in previous meetings, I believe you mentioned some of this is based on Indiana standards. Would you have some of the information or which title I could look under, just to refresh my memory so I know how this is constructed?
Yeah, we can pull that together for you.
I just, off the top of my head, I don't know which title. I know how to search and all that, but I just.
Right, most of the references we've been making to kind of Indiana standards are more for the access control ordinance versus the right-of-way dedication policy.
Okay.
But we can provide additional resources.
That's kind of the standard and the access control is built on.
Yeah, the access control ordinance is built off of a template that the Indiana Department of Transportation put together, working with planners and engineers across the state.
Would this be a plating process, or would a survey be required, or would it simply be by deed?
For the actual conveyance, right now it's worded to be by deed.
So would you say this is, you said a lot of municipalities are setting standards like this, so it's best practices?
Yes, yep, this is considered a best practice. It saves the town money. It helps you plan long-term so that you can have expansion projects when they're actually needed, and the town doesn't have to go out and spend money to purchase the property or go through eminent domain proceedings.
And the eminent domain, this is Brad again, is the G highlighted at the bottom?
Yes.
So in essence, if a property owner does not agree with the right of way, the town does have the ability to apply eminent domain and still acquire the property, correct?
And they would pay for it then.
Yes.
Praise value.
Right.
So it says right of way is required when necessary to construct frontage improvements. So are all project, like building a house, are you required to do frontage improvements?
No.
So then
No,
right-of-way is
there
not
are no
required.
improvements required within this ordinance. Right, the intention of the ordinance is that the town can essentially collect up properties along or expand the right of way along a corridor. And when it comes time that the town needs to expand in order to support the level of traffic and development that's happening along that area, then they can, and they don't have to go through eminent domain proceedings. They don't have to purchase any right of way because they will already own the right of way, with maybe the exception of a couple of pieces here and there that they would have to add in. But the whole idea is to preserve these corridors over time so that when they're needed, the town doesn't have to go through and spend a lot of money. and if you think about it as being a resident, you would want, right, if you want any of these improvements to be made, don't you want your town to not have to purchase it?
Yeah, but those private owners paid for their acreage to the center of the road. I just think for the town to take it, and it's not part of the plat.
Normally though, and within any property, there's a utility or a road easement on the side or front. There, it's already there.
To the edge of the pavement.
Even though you own to the edge of the pavement, they still have a right of way through there.
Well, no, you own to the center line. Case law in Indiana is edge of the traffic way. So
My point is, even though there's you still own that, but they still have an easement right of way through there. Well, they're established.
And this is a gray area for us as planners.
I mean, I
We've
can-
had several instances where we've had property owners say, this culvert on my driveway is collapsed and it's part of the road system that you guys need to come out and fix. And, we were like, well,
Well,
the property
problem
line
with
is
that
the center of
that-
the road, so where does that fall? Obviously we are paving roads and in these areas that have no right of way.
Typically, it was draining fine before they put the drive in. Therefore, they're responsible for the
And so
tile.
it has been a
I
case by case basis that we've
Right.
looked at on how to fix issues that come up along the way, but it's a great area.
Similarly, we might have areas around town that used to be a corporate boundary, Water Street, Pendleton Avenue, Main Street. So the right of ways are kind of fuzzy. They might be half platted and half not. Even though we might have major electric lines, water lines, sanitary sewer lines running on your property, certainly you wouldn't say, no, we don't want you to come fix the electric when it's out. But that's where our plans, for example, for bike pedestrian improvements get a little complicated.
I just think it should only be a part of the subdivision process, not of any ILP.
I will say it's typically applied more in a subdivision context. However,
I mean, it's worded like if you want to get a sign permit, they're gonna make you dedicate right away. And that's how any improvements, it says. I just think it's too broad. My opinion.
I think our recommendation would be that, you'd want to make it kind of as strict as possible, right? And then let the town decide when it wants to waive and when it doesn't. So that it's really there to give the town a leg to stand on if there is a significant need to have the right of way. And if the planning director and the planning commission want to waive right of way because they don't necessarily need it right now, or you want to wait and cover it in the future, then that's up to the town to decide.
So we still have an option in his scenario at a future date to amend or let that go through.
Yeah, it still goes through the site design process, just like any other process. So there's still an opportunity for it to get a waiver and not necessarily require the right of way to be dedication. It's still on a case by case basis, but the purpose is to really provide a very strong leg for the town to stand on in order to make the argument that they do need to acquire the right of way when it's necessary. And it would be triggered every single time that somebody goes through a permitting process. So maybe it's waived once on a property, and then the next time there's a more significant project, and then the town says, okay, we do actually need that right of way. So now we're going to go ahead and require you to dedicate it.
Similar to our sign ordinance. Our sign ordinance is very strict, small, old, but it still gives us the right to review every sign that comes through.
Jeff Graham, do you have any input on this part of the discussion?
I think you definitely nailed it in terms of it's a difficult part for planners. I can't quite make out the last thing that Tim said. I heard him talking about it, but I didn't quite get that. If you could repeat that, Tim.
My comment, Jeff, was that Brandon's
Ryan's on the phone.
kind of agreeing with Ryan is that setting the bar extremely high, it gives us the right to come back and review everything on a case-by-case basis. We can still vote to approve it, but we can still review it as well on that individual basis, much like our sign ordinance.
Yeah, with high standards, you can always come back and give waivers. If you have a low standard and somebody meets it, it's outside of your hands.
Correct.
But isn't the counter to that is if you have a very high standard, everything is going to be appealed and discussed, and you're having people come in and try to defend their positions continually?
Absolutely. That's the other side. I've always said that the strongest codes and the strongest zoning have very few variances and very few waivers because you have it the way you want it already. But both you gentlemen have nailed the opposite sides of the argument. From a purely planning standpoint, if you want additional oversight, though, the way to go is Tim's approach of a really high standard. But you'll have a lot of meetings and you'll have a lot of oversight, and that itself, each one of those gives rise to a possible lawsuit.
Therein lies why we have you, Jeff.
Well, I like to hear.
Well, and I guess, I mean, I do agree with having a high standard, but I feel like that, you know, giving the plan commission then leeway and making each case by case, it's almost like why do you even need to have a standard then? I mean, I'm not explaining this very well, but I feel like we're just opening ourselves up for, you know, making sure we're consistent and I don't want such a high standard that we're having to review everything.
Well, we kind of do that with the sign ordinance for a purpose. We don't want the signs to get out of hand. Therefore, looking at this, I think you want to start at the extreme and be very stringent on it as well. It's my opinion. But if you had a lower standard, you'd probably have a lot more meetings in there because we wouldn't like what a lot of people was trying to do or pass through.
And if I could add, so the right of ways that are in this, right, they're based off of the thoroughfare plan, right? And that identifies which corridors are functionally classified as local, collector, and arterial level. And that really determines what the right of ways are in a standard context, right? So it's based off of a planning effort that the town and community residents are involved in. So in theory, there shouldn't need to be very many waivers assigned, even with a higher bar. I wouldn't call it an extreme bar, right? Because it's technically setting it at the minimum standard that the residents through the thoroughfare plan have decided to support. But it does make it very, very important that you make sure that people in the town are involved in the thoroughfare planning process. And anytime that you do an update to the comp plan and the thoroughfare plan, that they're very involved in the processes so that what you're actually setting the standard to meets what the residents want to see.
So towns that have implemented something similar, what have the results been? Have they had a lot of variances?
So right now, actually, we just did this 2 or 3 years ago down the road in Portville. And they haven't had a ton of development to apply it to yet, but they have had some success along the US 36 corridor where they applied it. They looked at the standard, they looked at the thoroughfare plan that went along with it, and they acquired the necessary right-of-way through, it was actually, I think, a redevelopment process. It was a property that was being redeveloped, not a new development entirely. So the town was able to save money on US 36, and they can plan for those improvements in the future.
Do we know of any other cities throughout Indiana that have anything similar that we can?
We do have a list where we originally pulled the original templates from, but we can provide that.
I'm just curious on just similarities and precedents that's been set.
And Brandon, feel free to chime in if you've got some to pull.
Can you State that again. I couldn't hear it. I'm sorry.
Is Fort Bill's, is it triggered when a building permit is applied for?
Yep, theirs is a building permit.
Yes.
They force every owner that pulls a building permit to dedicate right away.
No, it triggers the process to be
So it's
reviewed
just open. to
before a
interpretation.
building permit is, before a building permit is provided.
I mean, I can agree.
Well, I've kind of changed my viewpoint now that I'm thinking about it, that if this thoroughfare plan is going to work, we need to set the standard, and we should not be giving variances, because if we do, then this plan will never work. I would guess it would have to be something very extreme before we would grant a waiver. Otherwise, you've got, your maybe your collector is working all along, and then you've got this place where you've given a waiver, and all of a sudden you can't complete your plan.
I think as long as you measure the building setback requirement from the thoroughfare plan right-of-way line, you're gonna leave your corridor open.
Well, and
Those will be my next comments. You're gonna have a building setback established anyway,
Yeah, and if
which
you,
is probably gonna go ahead and establish the right of way.
and
I
so,
think that is
Or a
probably
right of way.
one of our fears as staff is, if you have someone coming in and building or doing an addition on a home that does encroach in that potential setback area because you're along a certain corridor, that's where we wouldn't want to see something like that happen, because we know long-term, if we have to do land acquisition or through eminent domain, we're gonna have to acquire someone's house then, or a part, but if you can prevent that from happening, I think that's the key here is triggering that review process, so staff has time to raise any red flags. If someone pulls a sign permit for a commercial property, that it's not encroaching into this setback space, once we review it, if it's not reasonable for them to donate this right of way at that time, I think that's where we can make those decisions. And if it's something that is not, if it does fall into a gray area where, they should be, dedicating that right of way at that time, I think that's where at least we have that flexibility to look at it and make the best decision for the future of our transportation corridors, instead of having it be a larger expense for us later on because we don't provide any guidance for someone pulling that building permit. I guess that's my view on it, is because we've had that situation happen where someone has come to us and we've had this opportunity and we can do with it. It's kind of like we see in our future, this is going to be a pain for us later, or a more expensive issue for us later, and we don't have anything, we can't do something about it at this point. So,
I mean, I think we can preserve the corridor with setbacks without taking people's property away from them. If you want to come back in 10 years and build a road, then those owners need to be compensated properly for that right of way. That's what NDOT would do. Instead of saying, well, in exchange for this roofing permit, I'm gonna make you dedicate right away. I just think we can do it with setbacks with the thoroughfare plan without requiring right of way dedication with a building permit.
Any other comments?
One of the things I would like to see, this is Brad again, is an accurate update on the context zone.
Okay.
Because we do have a lot of park properties there, and that was my follow-up question. With regards to the city properties and the park properties, will these same standards apply to them?
Okay, Brad. With that, along with Jen had some questions. She'd like some more data. Would it be possible we make a recommendation to table this to the next meeting to get some more information?
And maybe some comparable ordinances, just so we can see what our neighbors are doing.
Because they might have some wording that you've suggested that NDOT some similarities in regards to how NDOT does it.
Okay, hearing those comments, I'll make the motion that we table the right-of-way dedication ordinance to the February meeting. Or I'm sorry, the March meeting, excuse me.
How are we already in February?
I know.
All right, do you have to, I'm not sure if that's you have to vote on that or not, but,
I'll second the motion for,
Thank you, Brad. So table. If Ryan and Brandon, you guys could answer those questions, one about the contact zone. Jim would like some examples of other municipalities, how it's worked there, and your question was
I just want copies of other ordinances.
copies of other ordinances.
And in our UDO, we can say, you know, building setback lines are measured from the thoroughfare plan right away. And that preserves our corridor.
Okay. All right, thanks for input. Thank you, Brandon.
yeah, thank you for all of the feedback on the right-of-way dedication ordinance. And I do have a list going here for the next March meeting.
All right, thank you.
All right, next up is the access management and control ordinance. So I'll turn it over to Ryan and Brandon once again.
I'll let Brandon take it.
Yeah, the access management control ordinance establishes minimum regulations for access to property from road right-of-way. The intent of the ordinance is to provide and manage access to land as it develops while preserving the regional flow of traffic in terms of safety, capacity, and mobility. The standards in the ordinance apply to private and public land along road rights-of-way that are under the jurisdiction of the town of Pendleton or NDOT. Dependent on the size of the development, a traffic impact study may be required, and this can help decision makers like the Plan Commission or Town Council to determine what access is appropriate for that development. Application of the access location and design standards of the ordinances requires identification of the functional classification of the street on which access is required. That's why it's referencing the thoroughfare plan map. I know that this is a very big document and there are a lot of moving parts. We have added a few graphics since we last met with the town and the staff. And we also had the chance to test this ordinance with the town staff with a previous proposed development in Pendleton. And from this process, we learned a lot. We made some changes to address the shortcomings of the ordinance. I will say NDOT does provide this template to all of its municipalities across the state. That's a part of the NDOT access management guide, and we could also provide that for your enjoyment. But I will now open it up for any comments, questions, or concerns with the access management and control ordinance.
Thank you, Brandon. Questions or comments? I'll take it.
The contiguous properties under one ownership will be considered one parcel. So, I mean, if you have a farmer who has a mile of fields, he only gets one driveway for all that frontage?
No, the drive, there's driveway spacing built into that.
But there's a limit of one per parcel, right?
I don't think that there's a limit for one per parcel.
Okay.
There is a on this quote. On large parcels, I believe that there's an option to have multiple drives.
Okay.
On Zoom, Connie, Cheryl,
Did we have
Carol.
number 10 highlighted for a reason? I'm not remembering why.
No, it's a carryover from just the Word document.
Can you
Brad?
talk a little bit about the temporary access permits? I'm just interested in waivers. It's in section 1.6 is where talk about temporary access.
Brandon, did you hear that question?
Yeah. The temporary access permit is conditional. And it should expire when the use of the site for which the temporary access permit was granted has ceased for 12 months or more. It's issued to a property that is regulated based on functional classification, so it has to be on a arterial or a collector roadway. Local roads don't really have access control. The installation of service drives or shared driveways would also eliminate the need for a temporary driveway. So I believe this temporary access permit would grant you access to a property that really isn't developed yet. And then that temporary access permit would then be pulled once that property does become eventually developed, or it applies for a driveway permit. That's when the temporary access permit, I'm sorry, would get pulled.
So would that be like during construction? What would be examples of that?
Yeah, that would be, for example, during construction. In the ordinance itself, the temporary access permit was granted for a site or a driveway that has changed such that the use of the driveway has increased from its initial use level at least 50%. So if the construction continues and it ramps up, and then they're starting to actually create the building footprints, then they would have to go through the formal process of getting an actual driveway and stop using the temporary access permit. But yes, construction would be an example of when to use the temporary access permit.
And if I could add there, because the ordinance also lays out shared drive access, if there is a property that doesn't have an opportunity or an option for a shared drive to be created, then a temporary access permit could be provided until an adjacent site develops, and then then you would apply the shared use drive and remove the temporary access. So it is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's just to make sure that you always have some sort of access until a better condition is possible. And Kyle, to your question before, there is at least in section 1.4, let's see, in section 1.4 C4, there is for a parcel, lot, or building site with frontage exceeding 600 feet, then additional drives can be permitted. And then it's based off of the driveway spacing determined by the corridor itself.
Okay, that table.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Cheryl? Carol?
Nothing for me.
Connie?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Brad?
On the table we're looking at with the posted speed limit, we do have areas in town where it is 20 miles per hour. So what would be the distance, minimum spacing between adjacent access points?
That is a good question. We can and should add a speed limit below 25 miles an hour. Right now, as read, it would be applying the 25-mile-an-hour zone.
Okay.
What about lots in the subdivision? Does that not apply to?
No, it's not really applied on local roads.
Okay.
These are really more of your high priority corridors. This is like the US 36, State Road 67, State Street outside of the downtown, potentially any new roadways that are identified within the thoroughfare plan. Those are really where we're expecting to add these like very high levels of access control. beyond that, there's not as much that's applied in like the local context.
So which types of, would that include your collector roads, or, I mean, what level of the class of roads would be included for this?
The highest level is the primary arterial, and that's going to have all of the standards applied to it. I think that there's driveway spacing and potentially some like driveway medians required for collector level roadways. And then the secondary arterial in between those two is kind of a mesh. But generally the requirements on a collector level roadway are more for driveway spacing.
I will say NDOT really formulated this access management guide to prevent something like State Road 9 or Scatterfield in Anderson, or even a little bit of US 36, where every business has their own curb cut and they're experiencing a lot of crashes, as well as they're not getting their flow of traffic they would like on that corridor because of the access is not controlled. So NDOT really wants those big primary arterials to have the access control along them.
Right, NDOT specifically developed this guide actually for communities like Pendleton to start implementing them so that they can use them on their own facilities actually. And I'll add that the templates that are provided within that document are context sensitive, so they have a couple of different options. For Pendleton, we started with a base that's a small community on the edge of growth. That's actually what it's called within the manual. So it's got a lot of best practices that are specific to towns like Pendleton that are dealing with these same issues like US 36.
I feel like this will be useful then as there's development along State Road 38 going to the west and more along 67. That will give us some of the guidelines that we need to be able to make sure that they're safe and effective.
And just to add, similar to the right-of-way dedication ordinance that we discussed, this is triggered within the site development and review process, well, through the Uniform Development Ordinance. So it's kind of triggered at the same level. So when you get site plans and go through the plotting process, then you actually get to review what the access level is for that property and then apply the ordinance. So.
Any further questions?
Does this have regulations for residential driveways that would be in subdivisions?
No. I don't believe so.
I thought we did.
Residential drives within?
Maybe I'm getting my documents jumbled in my head on what we've reviewed.
We have a developer ask, how wide can I make the driveway to say a 3-car garage?
Oh, we do have, yes, correction. We do have driveway and road width standards within this.
So is there, I guess, a part of this that kind of clearly separates it out then into this applies to driveways on collector and arterials versus local? So there was also a part about like driveways need to be at least 5 feet off the property
line. Double check. I believe it applies it more in just the standard land use context, so single family, multifamily.
So on page 14, it says no single family or multifamily driveway shall be less than 9 or greater than 18 feet at the public road right of way. Oh, and if you have more than a 2-bay garage, it can be 24 feet wide at the right of way. Yes. So after you go past the right of way, it can be as large as you want.
And it flares, well, yeah, behind the right of way, would expand. In most cases that we've used this, we've had a little time to practice this. In most cases, there's a limited amount of space before they get the garage door. So
Well, you end up with this weird triangle that 5 years later, they end up pouring
They fill
concrete
it.
there.
Exactly. We've had a
Yeah.
ton of discussion about that.
Someone like-
So we discussed that exact issue,
Yeah.
just a couple of weeks ago. And that's where the wording, with the additional driveway added with it, actually.
Makes sense.
it's not a whole nother width to go straight out, but in
It's
most
close,
cases,
yeah.
but it's closer. And a lot of times that third bay is recessed too, so it does give them a little more time. We're trying to find a way to make these driveways more friendly to how people actually use them. Yeah, we actually expanded the max or the maximum width for a 2-bay to 18 because we've seen that work better in most communities.
You know, when you're at your 16
You
homeowners.
can't park
usually-
2 cars next to
You can't
each
park
other.
2 cars next to each other. When you do, you open the door and you get out into the grass. So that's one of the reasons. Or you see homeowners come back now and they pour, you know, a
Do
little bit of
pavers
concrete
or-
on or put pavers that end up looking, you know.
It's because they've been end up driving one wheel into the grass and it looks poor, and they gotta make the property look nice.
Right. So, yeah. So let's just do it right to begin with. Solve an easy problem. And then just like you said too, Kyle, with that triangle cutout, most of the time we see people filling them in anyway, and then you have patchy concrete work and,
Yeah, you're better off
you know,
just making them straight.
right.
So we're still trying to like find the balance between, having a,
Have there been any streetcars built out here yet?
Carrie Glenn's got it.
They do have them?
They're not occupied yet.
And the other one.
The falls.
we have kind of drawn the line there with this because they've asked us to. We told them. we're gonna-
We actually pushed them to make them wider, and they did.
Yeah,
A builder's not gonna make it any bigger than he has to. So it behooves us to make them bigger.
but then again, you want to have a maximum somewhere so that your sidewalks don't turn into,
Tennis courts.
part of the driveway.
And we don't have a completely paved front yard.
Have you seen some of the condos in the news?
Yeah, they have been part of our discussion for sure. So
Good questions, comments.
all very good questions and comments. Thanks to everyone.
This was a good guide here.
It is a very thorough ordinance.
Yeah, I mean, and
So how come we struck that the town will receive confirmation from NDOT before issuing a permit?
We actually had discussions with NDOT, so our office meets with NDOT quarterly. And we had a discussion with them at the fourth quarter last year about what their driveway permitting process is and when it needs to go to the town versus when it needs to go to NDOT. And they said it's supposed to go through the local process before coming to them. So we switched the wording around to reflect that.
Okay.
I think before, we may have been using NDOT as a crutch maybe, where we would send it and say, tell us what you guys think about this. And really what we should be saying as a community is NDOT, we don't feel comfortable with having a cut here. You know, they really dive into that technical side of the driveway cut, and you can put driveway cuts many different places and you can engineer them and they will work. However, from a community corridor, a transportation corridor planning perspective, maybe those driveway cuts are not going to be the most beneficial for our community. So we're trying to look at it from a community planning perspective, whereas NDOT's looking at it from a very narrow engineering perspective.
Well, they'll generally look at just that one they even told us, that their requirements for what passes the bar is very, very low. Which is one reason why they produced the manual and are encouraging communities to address these issues before it ever gets to them. That way they also have a leg to stand on. So by the time that it gets to them, they can approve and follow through with their single driveway cut and not have to worry about, what the impacts are going to be as much.
I assume if somebody has a plan or needs, I'm looking at the 5 foot from a lot line, there's some instances where that may not work. They can just get a waiver.
Yes, yeah, waivers are allowed within the ordinance as well.
So I think when we have projects approach us now, we feel a little more empowered that we can make these decisions as a community. It's not INDOT, it is INDOT's road. However, we do have a say in what cuts go on and if that's the most beneficial location for a roadway cut or a driveway cut for our community. So we appreciate that relationship that you guys have built with INDOT, that, all of it. It's been a good process and a good, I guess, conclusion to
Right.
the driveway cut issue.
Does this have anything about requiring a traffic study, or is that part of the UDO?
This does have some requirements for traffic impact studies. I don't remember exactly what the threshold is, but it's outlined in one of the earlier sections.
Traffic impact study is required when a development generates 100 new trips to the adjacent street. A traffic impact study can also be requested by the planning director or plan commission.
We're voting on this now.
We're asking for a favorable recommendation to take it to the town council.
Are there any more questions? Okay, I'm gonna ask for our roll call vote then, please, for a favorable recommendation to pass this on to the town council.
We need a motion first.
That's fine. Can I have a motion to approve the access management control ordinance, please?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Carol. I have a second. Thank you.
Carol Hannah,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Brad Valentine,
Yes.
Kyle Eichhorn,
Yes.
Tim Pritchard,
Yes.
Jenny Sisson, Connie Schultz-Hines.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I really do appreciate everyone's comments and
Yeah.
feedback and, when we're reviewing these things,
Thank you, Brandon and Ryan as well.
very helpful.
Okay. Interchange master plan review.
All right, this is a new project for you guys. I think some of you have been part of some focus group meetings, so some of you may have seen it in the past already, but as a whole, this is a new project for Plan Commission to review. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background about it first. The Redevelopment Commission has hired a firm named Kimley Horn to do a interstate or a quadrant master plan for us out at exit 219. The reasons behind this, when we look at the southeast quadrant of I-69 and State Road 38 State Street, it may not be what we would do today if we had the opportunity to redevelop that property over again. We have a mix of uses in that business park where you have Tractor Supply. We have an apartment complex that's adjacent to Tractor Supply, which generates all the truck traffic every day. We have, some medical places back there. We have some fast food restaurants, and the traffic flow is just not ideal, I guess. So, we have basically 3 blank slates in the remaining 3 quadrants. How as a community do we see this developing over time? So the redevelopment commission really wanted to take a deeper dive into that to make sure that we were as a community guiding development rather than development coming in and guiding us. So I think this is a really important project for the town of Pendleton to really step up and say, this is what we want as a community, so the alternative. So Kimley Horn did get hired, and they've been working closely with the redevelopment commission. One document that I would like you to review that I've requested you guys to take a look at is the interchange market study. This document is fantastic. It's probably one of the most professional pieces of work that we've received in our office. If you haven't reviewed it already, I really encourage you to take a look through it. My takeaway from the document itself is the town of Pendleton really is not ready for any more commercial development until we have more rooftops in the town of Pendleton to support it. One of our major goals of this project is, we don't want to compete with the downtown. We don't want to kill the downtown. We want to make sure anything that we do out at the interchange is appropriate and timely so that we can support multiple commercial areas in the town of Pendleton. So timing is going to be very, very important on this master plan and how we implement it in the future. Market study aside, if you guys can take a look at the drawing that we've included on Google Drive. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
If the county's labeled wrong on page 2, that's the first thing I noticed.
Is it? We'll get that fixed. Thanks, Kyle. Okay, so there is a map with colored areas in the interchange area. I'll kind of walk through each one. So the first one is we're going to start with the southeast quadrant where the existing Pendleton Business Park is located, and also the Falls Point Business Park. What Kimley Horn was proposing for this quadrant was really to look at creating a health and wellness district that would then help support the wellness center that is existing out there. So any like-minded type businesses, such as doctor's offices, therapy places, other recreational type businesses would be a good fit in that wellness district. We also looked at a park and trail component as part of this too, and how that can get integrated into the site and complement that health and wellness district. Also in that quadrant, we looked very closely kind of in that yellow area that we eventually proposed for residential development. Originally, we thought maybe expansion of the Pendleton Business Park would be appropriate. However, it's not currently in town boundaries. It's not currently on our electric, in our electric territory. And the topography on that area is rolling. So it doesn't really lend itself well for commercial development. So that's why we thought the residential component would be a better fit. Moving up to the northeast quadrant, this was designated as an advanced manufacturing and technology district. And then as you move out from that district, it would transition into multifamily residential as well as that single family residential district. And we thought that would offer a good buffer from a more manufacturing centered district out into our current neighborhoods and single family residential areas. These residential areas could also help provide homes for anyone working in that advanced manufacturing and technology district. Probably the biggest element is on the west side of the interstate in the Future Keystone Development District. And this Future Keystone Development District is a very, it's one that we're going to have to be very timely on. Because again, we don't want to compete with downtown Pendleton or State Road 67 corridor with the commercial that we already have here. But we do need to make sure that that land is preserved so that we get the right fit for development in that area. Kimley Horn was very encouraging in that You know, we really could do something like is done at Saxony or, you know, that exit 210 area, that we can do something like that here in Pendleton too and have that quality of development. And then the residential development districts would be able to support it. So kind of a live, work, play type atmosphere on that side of the interstate. Of course, we have the state roads, or not state road 67, but the 67th Street Extension project that would cut through this area. And we also looked at potentially connecting to 146th Street that comes out of Hamilton County. How do we connect to that from these districts? And we saw there was a really good opportunity to potentially link that 67th Street extension to a future 146th Street road extension. We are also looking at doing a drainage master plan as part of this overall concept. You can see there's ponds that are located throughout the site or throughout the project study area. And these ponds, these stormwater retention ponds, would help plan out that stormwater system so that each site is not, it's just a more complete, cohesive, and comprehensive stormwater management plan for the area. And that helps make the area more attractive when we have larger developments coming in. And then you can see the dashed and the dashed lines would be that proposed trail network that would help connect our downtown to this area and then help connect up to our park system as well. I want to emphasize that this is a starting point for us. I hope you guys can take this and digest it and, you know, have questions prepared for the next meeting that we have. Because at this point in time, this is flexible. We can change. You know, if we think, you know, one of these potential uses is not appropriate for that area, we need to talk about it and figure out what is appropriate for the area. I would like to let you guys know that the Redevelopment Commission, they had this presented by Kinley Horn at the January Redevelopment Commission meeting, and it appears that the Redevelopment Commission is very pleased with the work that was put into this at this point. So we thought it was appropriate at this point now to take it to the Plan Commission, because the Redevelopment Commission is in need of help on implementing this plan in whatever form it does get approved in. So.
Very nice.
Good.
Just real quickly, this is Brad. What is the future Keystone Development District again? I didn't catch the definition of what that area is.
That area will likely be some type of commercial and retail use, or you know, it really is. Think of it more of an area that needs to be designated for future development that is most appropriate for Pendleton. So that could change over 10, 15 years. You know, maybe it's going to be development driven in what our residents want to see there. Does that make sense? It was presented to us as a, you know, if you look at something like a Saxony down at exit 210, where you have residential surrounding some commercial components and retail components, that it could be an area where people can live, work, and play in and around this district. However, it needs to be implemented when the time is right for our community. When we do population estimations for Pendleton, our department and our town manager, we think it's very realistic that our population in the next 20 to 30 years is going to be around 40,000 people. And so that's the future that we're planning right now. So I guess I don't want anyone to be nervous, because this is something that will progress over time, and it's not something that's going in tomorrow by any means.
Well, in Indiana, for the first time, I think, ever had a population increase as a state of 25,000 people, and we've not seen that as a state. So not just Pendleton, but the state as a whole. The state has to
The growth estimates mentioned in the market study are more modest based on our previous growth. However, if you look at it as in our max possible population, if you cover all of our undeveloped land with housing additions and other type of supporting developments, that's where we got that 40,000 number. So it might be high in the sky, we will never, ever, ever be that big, or we could see massive growth over the next 20 years.
This is Brad. With regards to the Advanced Manufacturing and Technology District, is that going to be putting more heavy truck traffic onto the two roundabouts between downtown and the interstate?
It could potentially, yes.
Public comments, I think I have a comment or two.
Sure. I said on the podium.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Edward Valenti. I'm with Decker Lawyer in Maynard. I represent Pendleton Development LLC, as well as the One Hunsinger Trust. These are both the two largest landowners in your proposed Keystone Development District and the surrounding area, and yet we have had no contact or input solicited regarding any of this from staff or from the redevelopment committee, or really here in town. And we're rather concerned with some of the things we see. The road bisecting through the property. It appears that you're planning on taking part of Pendleton Development's ground to make a park. And we're rather concerned about that. Would like to participate in the input process, short of other means that we are currently engaged in town. Who might we best direct our comments, questions, and concerns to?
I think it'd be appropriate to attend the redevelopment commission meetings, since they're the group that is spearheading this project.
And I think also then the planning commission, as you are turning over parts of it to the planning commission here this evening. Yes?
We are asking for planning commission's input tonight.
All right.
On
And
crafting the plan.
And one question I might have as well, if we're planning on Keystone redevelopment or development district being commercial, and yet the residents out there, as our client well knows too well, have rejected residential, how do we plan for the populace to receive a high traffic commercial out there if they won't even accept residential development?
And as part of the redevelopment commission process, there is going to be public input as part of that. Haven't gotten to that point.
I see. Well, we certainly would like to have some comments prior to that point and look forward to having our thoughts heard later. Yeah. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Any comments from the board on Zoom?
One other question. Is the 67th Street extension reflected on this diagram?
Yes, that's the roadway corridor that cuts through the future Keystone Development District and the Northern Residential Development District.
Keep in mind, board members and gentlemen there in the audience, that 67th Street and 146th Street are proposed. Those aren't set in stone yet.
I would say 67th Street extension is more set in stone. It's actually in design right now. The 146th Street is a corridor on paper right now that could change. I think just getting we want to get from point A to point B somehow is more of what we're trying to show in this. Where the actual alignment would be could absolutely vary from what we put down on paper.
Right. So those roads could move and change in time, along with Rachel's comments. They bisected everything out into purple and blue and brown and yellow collars. those can grow or shrink or change in time as well as things progress. And I would certainly think that they would. There's a lot going to happen out there the next 10 to 20 years, as it did at Exit 10. So I think we need to look at this drawing as just a conceptual idea of what we would like to see out there, for everybody to have ideas in their head to go forward with. I don't think this is something that's stamped and approved and going forward tonight.
No, but that's
So,
what this
no.
does do, it helps give us a community vision so that when we do have developers that come to us, we can say, this is what we are looking for.
That's correct.
So will this eventually get incorporated into the comp plan?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like if the advanced manufacturing gets developed, we know we want to connect point A to point B somehow.
Right.
So that development needs to have that incorporated, that element.
And that also shows how we're wanting to integrate our trail system and pull the town together.
Right.
Where it's not really put together right now.
Well, it helps everybody design the roads, the trails, get grant money for trails,
Right.
infrastructure. You get shovel-ready sites with lakes, sewers already in place. It's more attractive for developers to come in to build hotels and restaurants and warehouse manufacturing or whatever.
Do it right from the beginning.
This just is for review tonight.
Just for review, yeah.
When's the next RDC? So if we have input, we can attend the next RDC.
Yes, the next RDC meeting was supposed to be tomorrow night. We've changed that meeting date since the beginning of the year to be tomorrow, the first Thursday of the month.
Yes.
It's now the first Thursday of the month. However, you're not meeting in the month of February. So the next one will be the first Thursday in March.
So that'd be the appropriate place to.
However, if you guys want to communicate with me and I can convey your thoughts and opinions to the RDC, I'm more than happy to do that too.
Very good. Thank you.
Please take a look at the market study. It's really good.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your comments on that. That's where I'm going now.
Oh, gosh. I thought we forgot about that totally. I was like, oh, no.
Okay. Now, moving back to the first item that we postponed will be the Pelton Veterinary Clinic Site Development Plan Amendment.
All right, and we do have a petitioner on Zoom with us tonight. Mark Graff is the engineer and designer of the site. He had a 7 o'clock commitment, so that's why we pushed it to the end here. And he's been available for a few minutes now. Mark, can you hear us? Is he unmuted? Might need to be promoted.
I'm here.
There we go.
There we go. Okay.
Hello.
Hey. All right. I'm going to pull up the presentation and.
Fantastic. You guys are the hardest working township I know, or city.
Thank you.
Oh, actually, we just go into the presentation. Here we go. I think I did it at the end. All right, so Pendleton Veterinary Clinic at 1011 South Pendleton Avenue is pursuing the second phase of their site development plan review. So far, they have done a really nice job with phase 1 of a remodel on the old vet clinic building, which I think started out as a garage. This site was rezoned as planned business a couple years ago. Since then, they've made progress toward on the site. Most recently, they tore down the house that was on the adjacent lot, which is a big change you'll notice out there now. Parking is an issue and has been for a couple of years now. Dr. Crabtree has been doing good business, and with COVID, keeping people in their vehicles and animals in coming in and out of the vet clinic with the help of staff, I think that's probably just made the parking issue even more apparent. I was out there today myself, and it was a crowded parking lot. So the whole site development plan is kind of a work in progress, as Mark can tell you more about that. But tonight, they are seeking approval of at least expanding their parking lot. According to this plan, overall, it is in compliance with the planned business design guidelines. However, there are certain aspects that the size of the site, the existing vet clinic location, are kind of restricted. And I was hoping to get your take as the plan commission on where Mark and Dr. Crabtree should kind of go as they continue to flesh out elements of this site. So, Mark, do you want to talk at all about the project?
Well, first of all, thanks for taking the time to look at this and give us your review on it. And I also want to thank Kayla for all of her hard work on it all the way through to this point. It's been fantastic working with the city of Pendleton. We are currently winding up phase one on the interior remodel and renovation of the existing facility. Dr. Crabtree wasn't exactly sure the direction that his business would go. Originally, he was thinking that the second phase would be focused more on grooming and dog behavior. While that's part of the business model, just the way his business has shaped and progressed over the last couple of years, he sees that it would probably continue and expand more as a veterinarian clinic. That changed a few things for us a little bit in our design, but primarily we obviously needed an area for detention pond and detention storage. Our goal there was to make that a dry area, dry detention. It's only about a 2-foot swale. In a 100-year rain event, it will be dry in 40 to 45 minutes. Our goal for that area will be for it to be a mobile space. I don't know if I can point to this or not, but on the screen, but that area would be used as a dog park and a walking area for people that are maybe waiting to come in. There will still be grooming, obviously, that will be a part of the business, but the goal would be for that to be a really nice looking dog park area. And honestly, I have never put one in at this point, but I did see some photos of what Dr. Crabtree has in mind, and it's going to look very, very nice. So that's our plan for that detention area. And then the expansion project will have an area upstairs for administration, a break room for staff, and a conference room just for general meetings. Our goal was to make it look attractive and nice, curb appeal from the road, blend in with the neighborhood. At this point, what you're looking at is strictly a rendering from our architectural designer. My architect just this Tuesday received the information on the building layout and details and plans. He has not had a chance yet himself to generate a elevation view. The one thing that he's going to work on is that dormer that you're seeing at the top. While it will have a dormer there of some kind, it needs to be, in his opinion, cleaned up a little. It's too much of a focal point. But the wraparound porch is important to Dr. Crabtree. He wants that to have a relaxed feel, a place for people to sit down if they need to while they're waiting. An overall, he wanted to have an upscale look and feel. So that was incorporated into the plan. Originally, when we did our drainage plan and engineering, we did not have the wraparound porch calculated into our drainage calcs from our civil engineer. However, I did talk to him after Dr. Crabtree had presented this to us and this idea, and he said that he has the drainage capability into the detention pond as it's designed to handle the runoff without any problem. He's pretty sure he's fine with your green space requirements as well. And so we should be able to fall within compliance on everything from drainage, site runoff. The only other thing that we're looking to change, and you'll see it in this image, is a little bit lower lighting like small light poles rather than the real tall. I think the ordinance called for originally, and I may be wrong on the ordinance, but our engineer had spec'd in like 20-foot tall poles. And with conversation with Kayla and just in general conversations and Dr. Crabtree, he would like to see something a little lower. And, I think that it would look more attractive. So that's kind of a wrap to where we're at. We are starting the design process for the interior layouts. Probably we'll have those in a month or two. But our goal right now is to be able to move forward with getting this parking expansion and the drainage in on the site, because there's not real good drainage on this site. And if we had a large rain event, I don't have anywhere to go with the water at this point.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
So I encourage you all to look through the plans that are available as part of this presentation, and I've also put them in your Google Drive folder. For those of you who would like to take a closer look at the drainage sheets that are part of the package, I didn't include them in the presentation. And you can kind of see the overall layout of the site. Features some fencing, the dog park area, wraparound porch. I included one photo of the front of the site just so you can get an idea of what it looks like today and kind of where that addition will go. But like Mark said, at this point, if we could get some approval, at least on that front parking area, and also on that drainage area for them to kind of go somewhere, that would be really beneficial to them. One thing that I am curious how you guys feel about is the drive going around the side of the building to the employee parking in the back. There is a 5-foot sidewalk around the side of the building, but that only leaves, I think, 12 feet or so of drive to keep a 3-foot separation from the adjacent parking or property line. So it kind of ends up being a one-way to that back area. There's room for them to maneuver for employee parking, and we put signage or require signage to go up and kind of designate it as, authorized personnel only beyond this point, or something like that. Although I'm sure that would kind of come with the territory, and Dr. Crabtree would certainly, monitor that as he saw fit. But our ordinance does have some language on how wide a drive should be. So I was just curious on what you guys think about that, and if that's something that you would feel comfortable with, or if you think that maybe that needs to be looked at a little differently. Or I think overall the site is doing it's doing a great job, but is that something that needs to be looked at a little differently?
And there's proposed fencing all the way around to protect the neighbors. Is that correct?
There is 6-foot fencing around that drive parking lot side. And then there will be along the back parking lot and around the other side of the dog park. Yes. That is another component that is meeting the intent of the design guidelines, which is to shield any residential neighbors from the business use. However, according to our design guidelines, that really should be more of a landscape feature, not a 6-foot privacy fence. Although the 6-foot privacy fence does very much fit into that area with what the neighbors are also. Have we heard from any other neighbors? No, we have not. This is not. This hasn't been noticed, but been required to be notified via certified mail since I think the rezone. But we haven't heard any negative feedback, and it's been a busy construction site quite a bit here recently. That's usually when we hear about.
Going forward, though, it's probably more about double.
Yes.
What it currently is.
The parking will also double.
So this doesn't meet the 5-foot side setbacks in our new ordinance?
For the driveway cuts themselves, it does. However, the drive is not, I don't believe anyway, 100-foot 100 feet from the south driveway, which is something that's in our plan business design guidelines about driveways.
It says 100 feet,
Yes.
because the new ordinance says 185 feet for 30 miles an hour, so it wouldn't be that.
Yeah, these are some things that I'm curious what your take is on them. The driveway widths are about 23 to 25 feet right now, and there are 2 cuts being requested. So if that's a direction that needs to be changed, it's probably better to do that sooner than later. Currently, it's kind of an over glorified residential driveway that parking is sort of ended up in.
Did you say that was 30 miles?
It's 30 miles an hour there. Are they dedicating right away?
No, but right of way is already dedicated on this side of Pendleton Avenue.
Not 40 foot from center line though.
How many feet does this one have?
It looks like it get into the parking spaces, so that new ordinance would be in conflict. I don't have a scale with me, but
If we go, this one would be, we would have South Pendleton Avenue would be part of the context zone though, which would be a little bit different.
what's not now is that's what I was looking at. I think from has the fire department commented on access?
No, not at this time. I believe that they're still reviewing it.
Because I mean, I think the 2 entrances is a good idea because otherwise you're going to get jammed up in that parking lot. So even though it is less than the minimum, I think it's probably what works best for the site, just thinking about trying to get people in and out of there.
How close is the northern house, Kayla?
I think I wrote on the plans there that Kyle has the distance to their southern driveway cut.
It says distance question mark.
What about the one to the north?
No, it's showing, 60
60 feet.
from the edge, yeah, between the edge to edge.
And just how that back driveway is classified too, just from a liability standpoint. Any issues that they would be getting there?
I'm not sure about the answer to that.
I mean, I know it's residential now, but with this kind of design, it's not really a residential setup. Commercial design. It's,
Particularly with all the street lights going to be out in front parking lot.
yeah, and then so I'm curious too about the fire. Even though it is staff, there's accountability needed in that.
This has been zoned to plan business. So it is zoned business now.
It'd be something I'd run across.
Yeah, I mean, if an emergency vehicle gets in the back there and the parking lot's full, they got no way to get out except back all the way out.
Yeah.
There's not a full hammerhead at the end or anything. Be my concern there.
I
The
mean,
other question I have is where are they taking truck deliveries and is there adequate space for gaining access to the dumpster with this layout?
Yes, there is adequate access to the dumpster. That is something that Mark and I discussed.
And where are they taking deliveries for products coming in to the clinic?
Mark, do you want to answer that?
Like to be on the side there of the drive.
Yeah, the deliveries would come in to that side drive that would go around to the back. And really, there's not a lot of product that comes in and out of there as far as volume. It's relatively a small amount of product. They're not selling, dog food. They're not selling products to speak of. I mean, certainly they sell some, but it's something that would come in maybe once a week just from being there on the site in a 2-wheel dolly. It might come in 2 times a week. So there's not a large, the biggest delivery trucks that come in and out of there right now is FedEx. And they just park, in the center of the parking lot temporarily and unload and leave. The back parking lot is strictly for employees and we would mark that as one way. or I'm sorry, we would mark it as employee parking only, you know, and so there wouldn't be any reason for the public to go back to that employee parking lot.
How many employees does Dr. Crabtree currently have?
I'm going to say 12.
This is Cheryl. Did you say earlier that the neighbors have been re-notified? Are phase 2 requests, including the employee parking in the back?
No, not at this point. For site development, that is not required. However, if this were to go to BZA, then they would be notified.
So they will be notified at some point before it's final approval?
No, Cheryl, we don't, the petitioner doesn't have to notify for site development review plan. Now, if they were doing, because it's already zone plan business, so as long as the plan business design guidelines are being followed, there's no need for notification. However, if they're not going to follow the plan business design guidelines and it has to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a variance, then it would be notified.
I mean, I remember when it came for when it was zoned for business, but I sure don't remember this plan overall.
They're adding on.
Yeah.
Run the right side.
One thing that I think could help, I would suggest, is if we can get 5 feet off of that property line, our parking requirements say that you can have, and this is in our zoning ordinance, not in the plan business design guidelines. So while this board has the ability to waive the design guidelines for plan business, it doesn't have the right to waive those like underlying zoning requirements. So that back parking setback would be 5 feet from the property line instead of the 3, which does apply to the drive, but not the parking spaces. But 2 additional feet shouldn't be.
We could get that 2 additional feet without any problem.
I like the idea of having the employee parking in the back. It seems awkward to have the only access being a one-way driveway. There's no opportunity on the north side to have the driveway.
Icon, is there any consideration to
Or even do a loop all the way around from an emergency vehicle standpoint? You could always do underground detention if you don't have room.
We actually considered that and kind of looked at it. The main reason that we didn't was because we were trying to pick up that large green space and the park type look off to that north side.
And I do like having some green space. That's very nice.
But your thoughts?
It seems like well, again, the closest neighbor from what I can see is that the house that's on the south side. And that's going to be completely fenced along that line. So they're going to be protected from the view of the parking or in the driveway.
Yes, that's correct.
From a lighting perspective, will all of the commercial lighting in that front parking lot be impacting the neighbors to the south?
Our lighting requirements require that the lighting be focused downward and not impeding on neighboring properties.
I know that Mark is planning on providing a photometric plan that'll show the number of, and I'm speaking outside my comfort zone here, but the candles.
Foot candles.
Foot candles, thank you. on the parking area and the adjacent residential.
As long as they cut off too.
And they weren't planning it as tall as Schaumburg.
Yeah, they were hoping, I believe, to imitate our downtown style.
Are there plans for this clinic to operate 24 hours a day, or is this a basic 8 to 5, 9 to 6 type practice?
Not 24 at this point that I know of. Standard business hours.
We really don't have the final elevation view on this, do we? Or we don't have the fire department's final recommendation.
No. Mark, is there a bare minimum that you would kind of like to see tonight to move forward until next time?
Yeah, as far as final elevations and final layouts for the entire project, we would be a few weeks out getting all those design elements put together. But the main thing that we need is this parking layout to be approved and be able to move forward with our drainage so that we can get drainage onto the site. Right now, there's just for years and years, this site is drained from a single 4-inch clay tile that runs down and connects into a creek down there, and it just can't handle very much water. And the clinic has been flooded out in the past a few times under heavy rain events. So we want to prevent that from happening again and, you know, begin to develop the drainage in the detention system. And then as the architectural plans are developed for the second phase, we'd be happy to come back and, you know, show everyone what we have developed there. The concern about the employee parking not having a, you know, a turnaround for an emergency vehicle and things of that nature is certainly something that we thought a lot about. And my engineer from Engineering Solutions I've worked with for many years, he put a lot of thought into this site and trying to figure out what's the best long-term piece. Even the dumpster piece was looked at 2 different times because we had the dumpster landfill company out there, made sure that they were comfortable with being able to go in and dump and be able to back out. And they said there's not going to be any problem. One thing that is currently there is while this drive, that's the one-way drive going back to the employee parking, right across from that on the adjacent property, there's another drive that goes back to like a post frame building as well. So there's sort of 2 drives side by side running back through that area. Honestly, 2 small cars would probably get by each other if they needed to. An emergency vehicle would be able to turn around back there, and obviously not a fire truck. In the future, where you see that turnaround for the last employee parking location, it was our thoughts, and we have looked at the idea. And in fact, Kayla had brought it up early on when we started the planning. And, you know, possibly that, you know, in time we might be able to get an easement or, you know, the availability to have another exit off of the property onto. And I apologize, I don't know the adjacent road there, but there's a road that would tie into that. What is that? I can't read it, but Reformatory? Is that what that says?
Reformatory.
Okay, Reformatory. I don't have my glasses on, sorry. You know, and we might be able to get an easement and have another, you know, egress there off of the site. But, you know, we talked about doing under drain and bringing another drive on around, and certainly that's a possibility. He didn't want to kill that whole park area because he feels like it's important to have a really nice look and a lot of green space over there. And in his opinion, he doesn't, the doctor's opinion, when I say his, Dr. Crabtree, he just didn't feel like for his employees, he needed a 2-way traffic, and he did not need them to be able to drive all the way around. But so I don't know if that answers any of your questions or not, but.
I have an additional question. The business model is changing a little bit because currently there's not an outdoor dog park there, which would bring the question up of noise when you have a lot of dogs outside. And I don't know if that's been mentioned, brought up, how that's controlled. Because a lot of dogs barking, that noise carries in that area. Is there anything from an architectural standpoint that helps reduce that, aside for it being grass surface? I don't know if there's anything to kind of temper that, control that. And again, that changes the use of that space with the different business models. I don't know if.
In terms of it being zoned planned business though, I don't think, and I'm speaking out of turn on this, I don't think that we can really look at that as part of this design process. Because they didn't have to get a conditional use to be on the site. They are a permitted use in the planned business district. So veterinary office, I mean, they could have a fenced in area and not called a dog park, but that's where the dogs go outside to use the restroom. So I think as the semantics of it are a little, we just have to be careful.
Okay, I just want to vet through the
Yes.
questions and make sure we're thinking through everything, since it is a little different now.
I really feel we need to wait on the fire department's comments.
Is Chris on Zoom by chance?
I sent them
I
an
think he
invite.
might have. No,
Chris, no done?
He might have been earlier, Taylor.
okay.
Just to clarify too, it doesn't appear that that dog park is going to be like public access. It's going to be more just an area that people waiting or are going to use, because it looks like it's being fenced all the way around. Is that, it's not going to be like a public dog park, right?
That's correct. One thing that happens, is people come into the veterinarian clinic and they maybe drove, 30 minutes, an hour, 40 minutes. Every dog needs to stretch and walk a little bit and use the facility. So just having a dedicated space that they can, let them go out on a leash and, it would just be used for customers that's coming into the veterinarian clinic. It's not an open dog park that he's opening up for people to use from the public. Also, his primary focus for it is not to be used as a training facility or something of that nature. Originally, he was kind of thinking that, but he's taken that off the table. It was strictly be used for the veterinarian clinic. And so there wouldn't be any, high volume usage in that area. His main focus is he wants it to look attractive from the road. He wants to fit into the neighborhood. I've had a chance since I've been working around there to talk to a lot of the neighbors, and everybody loves Dr. Crabtree. He works hard to get along with neighbors. So I know if there was issues with dogs making noise, he would be on it immediately to take care of that problem. But I understand, it changes the use a little bit. And certainly, primarily we're using it for detention. That's its first and foremost use. He just wanted to dress it up with some, some of these small little exercise type, I don't even really know what to call them, but they're very cute. They look awesome. And I've never put one in before, but that's sort of his vision, is for it to look attractive out there. It'll be a mode detention, and it should have a very good curb appeal and fit into the neighborhood very well.
Thank you for your. Mark, would it be possible, and I'm out loud here, to run I think that the 12-foot or near one-way drive to the back is a concern at this point. If you could explore over the next month some, if there is another option, what would that look like? I think that'd make the board feel quite a bit better, as well as staff.
Yes, I think a second option, just an option on an additional drive or a continuous loop. Secondly, and obviously more importantly, we need the recommendation back from the fire department,
Okay.
what they need to do, in
I'll
my
pursue
opinion.
that.
With that said, I'll make a motion to table this to the March meeting.
All right, Mark, we'll be working with you over the course of the next month.
Okay, that sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments, questions? Being adjourned.
Got one more thing, but you guys don't need to be in meeting for it.
Okay, it's too late.
Walk down.
Now you're on. I got some signatures.
Rachel.